Hi, everybody. It's Debbie. So glad to see you guys back. You guys should be proud of me. I'm actually starting on time. That's like, that in itself is a momentous occasion. I am really proud to introduce Mr. Ken Gerhard. Thank you so very much for coming, Ken. Um, Ken is absolutely amazing. He really is. He's been a cryptozoologist for many, many, many years. And Ken, we were just basically with Stan. You've led an amazing career and an amazing life, and I just really would just like to hear you talk about so much of what you've done and what you've experienced. And I mean, you're just like my mentor. You really are. I mean, you're just absolutely amazing. And yes, I have taken Ken's classes, and he's good. Now, he's not going to be like all those other teachers that are going to let you just slide by. Now, Ken don't play that. It's like if you take his class, you're going to learn. And I
Well,
really liked that. I appreciated that.
well, thank
So,
you for having me on, Debbie. It's definitely an honor and a pleasure to be here with you tonight. And I appreciate you taking my course. You were an outstanding student.
I hung in there. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I swear I would take it over again just for the fun of doing it. I really would. But let's talk about you now. Tell us, how did it start with you first getting into cryptozoology? What is the thing that really sparked you off in the very beginning on this?
Oh gosh, yeah, people ask me that a lot because obviously there aren't many of us in this field, and it's kind of an unusual pursuit, discipline, if you will. Uh, what I always say is that my father was a scientist and a forestry professor, and I grew up kind of in the North Woods, but I spent a lot of time in the outdoors, and I loved collecting critters when I was a kid, salamanders and snakes and all kinds of creepy crawlies. And so I've always loved animals. And my first pet was a caiman, which is a small alligator. And so I was always been about all kinds of creatures, if you will. And then I also loved monster movies growing up. I grew up in an era where it was, Godzilla and King Kong and Creature from the Black Lagoon and all that good stuff. So I remember when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I don't know if they still do this, Debbie, but when I was a kid back in the 70s, Saturday morning was cartoons, obviously, and one of my favorites was Scooby Doo. So I was probably watching Scooby Doo, I imagine. But
I love Scooby Doo.
oh yeah, how could you not? Those meddling kids. But I remember watching one Saturday morning. There was a news break, and they did a little short segment on Bigfoot, and they showed a clip from the famous Patterson Gimlin film from 1967. Incidentally, filmed exactly a week after I was born, and they showed pictures of guys holding the big plaster casts of big human-like footprints. And so something just clicked. I thought that the idea of Bigfoot was really amazing. I viewed it as kind of an animal, something that had been undiscovered, but also a monster, big size, big and hairy and scary. So that really started me on my journey, and I passionately researched these topics when I was a kid. I used to go down to the library and check out all the books and stuff. And, at that time, there were some cool TV shows on, like The Old In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy and stuff like that. And my mother was a huge influence on me. She traveled around. She took me around the world with her. She was a travel agent, and so we traveled all over the place. And at age 9, she took me to the Amazon jungle, and I got to meet, primitive tribes like the Jivaro and Yagua. We went to Australia and Africa, Asia, all these places. And finally, when I was 15 years old, my mom arranged for my father and I to travel to Loch Ness in Scotland, and of course, home of the Nessie, the Loch Ness monster. And I spent the better part of a week trying to do an investigation. When I was 14 or 15 years old, I had a little 8mm movie camera. I spent a lot of time by the lock, just kind of watching, looking out, hoping I would see something break the surface. And then I, interviewed some of the local people and asked them what their thoughts were, if they'd ever seen anything. So that, yeah, it was just something that kind of sparked my interest at a young age, and I've just always been passionate about it. Never expected to do it as a career. I think I've just been very lucky, very blessed to have had opportunities to do this full time. And yeah, so many decades ago, when the internet was getting going, I hooked up with some Bigfoot researchers here in Texas, and they took me out to some areas, and I heard things and saw evidence and different things, and you know, wrote a book, started doing TV shows. It just kind of snowballed for me. So I've been very blessed, and yeah, it's a fascinating field. I love to travel. I love to meet people. I love to spend a lot of time in the outdoors, of course. So it's been quite a journey.
It certainly has. I mean, not a lot of people can say that they've actually met, very rarely seen indigenous tribes in that way. And, to be able to meet them, I mean, it's amazing. I've never done anything like that. My dad was in the service, so we traveled a lot.
Oh, cool.
And I really didn't, yeah, oh, yeah, I could never go to the places that we lived in growing up. I didn't come over to the United States till I was 12 years old. So we didn't really know just that a little bit. We didn't even know about a lot of the monsters and the things that were going on over here. And and when we were talking about Bigfoot, and I had mentioned I had actually seen one time. I had no idea what I was looking at because I
Wow.
didn't know what they were. I had no idea. So it was something that happened that was just so raw and so innocent because I thought something got loose from the local zoo. I had no idea what this thing was. It's just he was a lot bigger than me and had a lot more hair. But and then when I told everybody what we saw, he goes, "Oh, you're hallucinating. You're this, you're that." I was 16, and I was like, "I don't even know what I saw." Are you bringing? Oh, yeah, Teresa. Hi, Teresa. By the way, yeah, she wants to know if you're bringing copies of your book to the Deep South Para Comic Con.
Oh,
You
always.
need
Yeah.
an
Whenever I
autographed
appear at
copy.
an event, I've got books and things for
Good.
sale, and I'm honored to sign them.
Well, I have a feeling that so many people just on our team are going to be collecting up your books. So you guys better come out quick. You better get there before we do.
Looking forward to it.
But oh, this I'm just so excited about this one, mostly in part from people like you coming. I mean, I'm just like so glad I finally get to sit down and talk with you. We've done our classes together and everything, but this will be the first time that we've met face to face.
That's true.
And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I don't I
So
don't
I'm
get
just so looking.
I don't get down into that area much, unfortunately. So
I know it's true. We're way down here. Um, Now, did you working, because I have experience with this, you working in the zoo environment like you have done for years,
mhm.
do you think that that has helped you in the cryptozoology?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I've been a volunteer educator, a docent at the San Antonio Zoo for about 9 years now, and it has helped me immensely. One of the things I regret was that I never did actually get a college degree in zoology or biology or any of the things that might have given me a little bit more foundation and credibility. As I mentioned, my father was a scientist and a college professor, so I did grow up in an academic household, but working at the zoo has been an amazing experience. The San Antonio Zoo has an interesting history. We actually searched for the Yeti or the abominable snowman back in 1957. We're the only zoo that ever mounted an expedition to search for one of these mysterious creatures. And I've had an opportunity to get to know, you know, we have an amazing conservation biologist, Dante Fenolio, who travels around the world and discovers new species, usually like deep in caves and things. He goes into these caves and finds these isolated populations of, you know, blind catfish and salamanders and things like that. Um, we have one of the top bird departments in the of any zoo in the country. We incubate and hand raise, uh, you know, very endangered birds. I got to basically handle one of the rarest birds in the world last year. The guy just threw it in my hands. I was like, here, this thing is extinct in the wild. It's called a Guam rail. That was pretty cool. Um, yeah, so just working with the scientists there. You know, as an educator there, we have to basically study a lot of the things because what you know we're there helping the school groups and uh, you know visitors at the zoo just basically understand the next level of what's going on with conservation and animals at the zoo, and that's what we really all zoos really emphasize conservation. I mean, that's
Mhm.
why zoos exist,
Yeah.
and I know a lot of people have, you know, including my late aunt, she was an animal lover and she had a very negative view of zoos. Like, oh, those poor animals, you're putting them in cages and whatever. And they're really not so much in cages anymore because zoos have changed so that usually the habitats are,
Mhm.
you know, they're obviously not as big as the animal would be free ranging in the wild. But on the other hand, the animals are very well cared for. I actually had an interesting conversation with a visitor last week who she said, you know, I was telling her that animals live twice as long in the zoo because they have
Right.
world class health care and scientifically formulated diet, and the people that take care of them really, you know, love the animals. And she was like, oh, I thought it was the opposite. I thought animals in the zoo didn't live very long. I said, no, that's not true at all. They live a
Ooh.
long time. What we strive to do at zoos is what are known as species survival plans, SSPs. So if there are animals, and sadly there are a lot of animals these days that are vulnerable or endangered due to habitat loss and you know pollution and different factors like that. So you know we in zoos we strive to maintain species and reproduce species that might not be doing so well in the wild. So um, there's really an amazing system in place. All the zoos belong to an organization or several organizations, but that are scientifically accredited. But we'll exchange on a regular basis. Hey, we need a new jaguar to breed with our male, and we'll send you a zebra, and then you can send the Cincinnati Zoo that gorilla, and you know, we just kind of try to keep the
Mhm.
programs going. And again, a lot of these animals, you know, that you'll see at zoos are almost extinct in the wild. You know, they're only
True.
maintained in zoo populations. So so yeah, I love working at the zoo, and you know, every day I learn something new.
It is fascinating. I used to work at the Miami Metro Zoo back
Oh,
years
nice.
ago.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was. And this is like near the very, very beginning of it. And I worked with Dr. Ezra from the San Diego Zoo. He had
Oh, okay.
San
Yeah.
Diego. Yeah, and he came out there, and it was just so much fun working with him. He had a great sense of humor and just nicest guy in the world you'd ever want to meet, and just made going to work, even if it wasn't as pleasurable with the animals, he made it twice as pleasurable, with his attitude. I mean, he was just a wonderful man. Exactly what you would expect the typical zoo vet to be, is like
Right.
anything can happen, anything can happen, and usually it did. But
Yeah, that's
I
true.
really enjoyed my time there. But I agree with you with the cryptozoology. I listened very carefully because I also got trained as a veterinarian technologist back years ago before the zoo. And physiologically speaking, I can look at it in a scientific fact of, well, physiologically, could that be possible? Yeah, probable no, you know.
Hmm.
Um, my that's where I think it gets me into trouble sometimes, because a lot of people are like, "Oh, no, no, this is definitely the way that this is." Um, I think the biggest thing for me are mermaids. No, no, it just, I'm sorry, it cannot happen that way. If you look at the actual physiological means behind this, it would not be possible. The salinity of the water alone would not make it possible. You can't do it. But I digress. But with me working around animals for as many years as I did, and knowing a lot of the actual physical, medical, physiological, everything going along with it, it puts a more of a critique into it, and looking at it more on a scientific level. And I'm not so sure if that actually helps me sometimes or hinders me sometimes. But sometimes I think I'm too and then I have to think about it, and it's like, Deb, anything is possible. May not be probable, but it is possible.
Well,
But
yeah, that's a great way to look at it, I think. And yeah, your experience has definitely given you, as you said, an insight that, maybe a lot of laymen don't, wouldn't understand. Well, why can't a mermaid exist? We saw that documentary on the Animal Planet that was made up, but kind of fun. But you remember, Debbie, the class I did on romantic zoology. And, it's widely believed now that sightings of mermaids, which went on for centuries as brave men sailed across the world to unknown lands, that those sightings were largely based on sightings of things like manatees and seals and things that would come up out of the water in the distance. And for whatever reason, they would see it in a certain way where, like manatees, for example, will, the females will hold their young and kind of cradle their young up here to their breast when they
yeah,
come up out of the water, which is a very human-like characteristic.
and it's
Also,
adorable.
you have different optical illusions on the horizon sometimes where things look like they're sticking out of the water farther than they are. So that's one example. I mean, it's kind of a more of a pragmatic explanation. But still, it's as you said. I mean, science is about probability. I appreciate you saying that. I have this discussion with people all the time. What's probable and improbable, and
Mhm.
there tend to be a lot of people in my field that will make kind of these bold pronouncements, definitive announcements like Bigfoot is this and this is that, and that's really not the way we should approach it. We should say, well, I'm of the opinion that Bigfoot is that, or I've concluded that this is this way or that way, because we never know. And science is really about, things being kind of tested over periods of time.
Mhm.
And as you know, many long-standing theories, hypotheses have been challenged and tested, and with new techniques or technologies or things they've been overturned. Things get overturned, and once they're challenged, oh well, we were wrong. This is not actually related to this, or these. So you have to. I always tell people, if I'm really, really convinced that something exists, I might go as high as 90%. I'm 80 or 90% convinced that might exist, but you always got to have that kind of little margin of error there because we just don't know.
You just don't know. I wanted to get your thoughts on something, Ken.
Mm-hmm.
This is very recent, very, very recent, and and I'm sure you've probably heard about it. Heavens knows it's been everywhere. They've just come up with, well, not just. I think they were born last August, October. The three dire wolves that they brought back from extinction. What are your thoughts on that?
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
Teresa said it right there too. Do you believe they really haven't created it? Yeah.
Yeah. My understanding, and of course, I've been barraged like everyone else with this news recently. Sadly, it seems, even though it seems like a really amazing and romantic idea, it seems like this particular situation is more of a publicity stunt. I mean, there is
Mhm.
definitely some science applied or used, but these particular wolves that are being referred to by this company as dire wolves are really just regular gray wolves, Canis lupus, that have had their genes somewhat altered to look a certain way. And actually, not even so much as what we think dire wolves looked like, but more like what
Right,
dire wolves have looked like in different TV shows like Game of Thrones and things like that. So,
right,
um, dire wolves, and we were just talking about this, how things get overturned. Dire wolves, we used to think, or scientists used to think, that it was a subspecies of Canis lupus, gray wolves, but now it turns out they're in a completely different genus, based on genetic testing. So they are in the canid family, so they are wolf-like or dog-like animals, but we don't know if they're genetically close enough to modern wolves to really be considered wolves, even though they've been
right.
referred to as dire wolves. Um, Canis dirus, I think that, like I said, the genus just changed, and I can't remember the name, but we know that they were plentiful throughout North America during the Pleistocene up until about 11,000 years ago. We found tons of their fossils and teeth and things. They looked very much like modern wolves, except they were, bigger and more robust with shorter legs. They weren't really built to run as much. They were probably more like scavengers. And here's an interesting fact: there is fossil evidence from the Ozarks that indicates that there might have been an isolated population of dire wolves around as recently as 4,000 years ago, which is pretty amazing.
Interesting.
But yeah, these are not actual dire wolves. I think this is more of like just kind of a publicity marketing thing. Um, so it's a little bit kind of I don't want to be disingenuous, but it's kind of it's not real science. It's kind of like uh, play science, or I mean, again, they are doing amazing things in terms of being able to deal with genetics and things like that. And I guess the benefit is, or the positives are, that it does invoke this idea of, we've been talking for years about bringing back the woolly mammoth, which wouldn't be a really woolly mammoth. It would be like woolly mammoth hybrid with an Asian elephant, perhaps, or bringing back the thylacine or Tasmanian tiger, which is a cryptid, but we have enough DNA, but we wouldn't be able to actually, create a real thylacine or Tasmanian tiger. It would be hybridized with its closest living relative, which would be a Tasmanian devil, or something called a quoll, which is like a little carnivorous marsupial. So, but what it does is, I think it invigorates our spirit of understanding and appreciating species that did go extinct in the past, and maybe also, since we were just talking about conservation in zoos, maybe it will also inspire people to appreciate how tragic it is when something does go extinct. Now, something like the dire wolves, that was basically just a mass extinction that occurred at the end of the Pleistocene, so humans didn't have a huge role in that. But certainly in modern times, there have been a number of species that have presumably got extinct: the ivory-billed woodpecker, the Caribbean monk seal, the great auk, the dodo bird, the stellar sea cow. All of these things were hunted to extinction by humans, and isn't that a shame
Mhm.
that
It
we
is.
we had to go there? So yeah, I hate to be a Dr. Killjoy here, but no, these are not real
No.
dire wolves. Um,
Now,
again, it seems like more of a kind of a publicity stunt or something.
yeah, because weren't they? This is my understanding. I could be incorrect, but weren't they actually their genetic makeup was actually modified by using the CRISPR method?
Oh gosh, sounds like you might know more about that than I do, but their genes were altered. So,
They were
I'm
altered.
not a
Yeah.
geneticist, but it sounds like, they can do all kinds of amazing things with DNA these days by altering genetic codes and things like that. So, you have your DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, and then there's RNA, and those things can be altered or adjusted based on what scientists are able to look at in terms of different DNA strands and mutations and things within those. So I don't know if you want to explain that to me. I'd love to learn what that method is.
I don't, I don't really know the complete ins and outs of it either, Ken, believe me. I mean, that is like, but it's a method that they've used that they have also wanted to bring back the woolly mammoth with.
Okay,
And
so
to
yeah,
me, that's yeah. And to me, it's forgive me, it's silly because I mean, we should have been thinking more about the loss of the last white rhino that we did have a
oh yeah,
huge hand in on that. What a tragedy. And that was the most recent one that I know of that is just mind blowing. It's like, don't worry about bringing something back, worry about preserving what we've already got
yeah.
that we're tragically allowing to.
Let's say what we have. You know what it just occurred to me that, and this was obviously not the same technology being used, but there used to be a wild bovid in Europe called the auroch, AUROCH, or aurochs, and I forget when the last one was killed. I think it was like in the 16 or 1700s in Poland, but they years later cattle breeders in Europe managed to basically bring back a semblance of it by breeding different, different breeds of cattle together that had similar appearances and looks, and they kind of modeled. It wasn't the real thing, but it was kind of like a similar, like an homage. So I guess that was kind of like the original idea to maybe do something like that. Um, but yeah, there's they're doing some amazing things with DNA. There's no doubt about that. We should be
There's no
very
doubt about that.
fascinated by some of the work that's being done in terms of not just necessarily modifying it, because they're introducing DNA from extinct species into living things. That's pretty amazing. But yeah, let's keep what we have. I'm with you there.
Right, right. Now, Lee's got a question. She said, Coast to Coast with George Norrie covered a couple seeing a dogman type creature in the British forest, 8 foot tall and covered with hair. What are your thoughts?
Oh gosh, yeah, I think I'm probably familiar with this
Good
case.
one, Lee.
There's a British researcher named Paul Sinclair who has there's a particular area, I think it's called Brixton, which is in Yorkshire in northeast England, and there have been a lot of sightings of werewolf type dogman, I guess we'd call them, type creatures up there. And this kind of reminds me of what we were talking about earlier, right, Debbie? I mean, the idea of a half man, half wolf, or a wolf headed man or whatever is not really scientifically viable. So this is one of those really weird cryptids, like a mermaid or a goat man or a pig man or any of those kind of
Big man. An
human.
alpaca man.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like the island of Dr. Moreau, if you remember that story. But
I
uh,
do.
yeah, I had an opportunity to interview not the eyewitnesses, but Paul Sinclair, the investigator, about 2 years ago at length, and he's spoken to several people up in that area that claim that they've seen this werewolf type creature. Now, what's really interesting is that some of the recurring descriptions that he's gotten, eyewitnesses insist that these creatures, whatever they are, really resemble like werewolves in different movies, like from Underworld or Harry Potter, or some of these like pop culture werewolves that people see in movies. And they're like, I swear that's what it looked like. Basically a wolf head, broad shoulders, upright, 6 to 8 feet tall, covered in hair, walking on its hind legs primarily. And here we have a similar version in North America, of course, the beast of Bray Road in Wisconsin, the Michigan Dogman, the beast of the LBL in Kentucky. So they're having these dogman creatures have been reported by a number of people in recent decades. I've interviewed several eyewitnesses. I don't know. I think it's, we were talking earlier about what's impossible and possible. Now, this is not zoologically possible. So we're not talking about some undiscovered species. But if people are open minded to other mechanisms beyond our understanding, and then we're talking about things like the supernatural and metaphysical, and there are things that are happening in our world that we don't quite understand yet. So I think I would put these dogman creatures squarely in that category.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, that's like you were saying, that's where my early training comes in at, and I'm like, hmm, no, no.
It's still fun to investigate, though. I
But
mean,
it is.
sometimes.
But then you always sit around and you think, but what if? What if that oh, well, yeah, you could look into that.
Mm.
Because you just don't know. And there are so many things that happen in this world today that you're like, who would have ever thought that could have happened? I mean, it's just so out there, but it's like, but there it is.
Yeah, it
Like
seems
the
like
platypus.
the platypus, great example. Well, it seems like we're circling back around a bit, though. But I understand I'm not a conspiracy theorist per se, but I know that some of the people that are interested in the dogman phenomenon tend to speculate about genetic experimentation by the military or some
Yes,
nefarious secret organization that is somehow making these half man, half wolf hybrids. So I don't know if that's possible. I would say it's improbable at this point, to use your word.
right.
But who knows? I think, honestly, I think the Dogman is again more of a metaphysical. Now, I'm not a real paranormal investigator per se. I can tell you I've tagged along on ghost hunts and I've seen doors slam and other weird things happen where I thought, okay, there is stuff that we don't understand going on around us. But many of the Dogman eyewitnesses have claimed that these creatures exhibit characteristics and behaviors that are completely unnatural. And, there's the ghost light phenomenon that's often associated with them. There are weird, like green mists and things that will come out of the darkness before these things appear. Sometimes when the eyewitnesses will claim that they're hearing like weird clicking and popping noises while they're having these. So it almost seems
Right.
like something. And if people, your listeners can use their own terminology if they want to call it interdimensional or demonic or extraterrestrial or something like that. There's all kinds of different interpretations of that. But certainly, if the Dogman phenomenon is real, it represents something really weird and far out like that. That's
Right.
just kind of beyond our understanding.
That's true. And really, and that's really where I admire a lot of these paranormal investigators, the ones that are just really committed to doing what they do. They don't look at the impossible and consider it impossible. They look at it like an adventure, see what's behind it. Um, me being a paranormal investigator myself from years and years and years, the weirder something is, the more I have to question, huh, how'd that happen? Well, I gotta see. And sometimes my curiosity can get the better of me, I have to say. So I have to be careful. But there's also like really strict rules that I follow. I have strict rules for myself. Don't go in anywhere if you don't have permission. None of this urban exploration. No, it's called trespassing. But we don't do that. But thank you, Lee. Um, but in so many of these cases that you look at it like that's just impossible. But if you really get down to the get down to the basics, get down to the very, very, very beginning of it, as far down as you can go, there are extenuating circumstances that could have led up to something like this.
Mm-hmm.
It would be rare and it would be exceptional, but it could have led to something like that, which goes into like the dog man or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like we said, look at the platypus. Who would have thunk? That's the cutest little thing I've ever seen in my life. But you're looking at five animals,
Yeah,
and none
yeah,
of
they're
them
definitely.
should have been interbreeding.
Yeah,
But there
scientists
is.
definitely were scratching their heads when the first platypus carcass
Could you
came in
imagine?
there. This can't be real. So,
This can't
I should have mentioned also that several dogman witnesses also have reported, and this is something that's in your wheelhouse, the kind of residual hauntings, or what do they call it, attachments? Where like after they have the sighting, it's almost like it follows them home, and they start having all kinds of weird poltergeist activity and things like that. So again, it's pretty far out stuff. I definitely put it in a different category than something like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Um, with Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster, we're looking at something biological, more than likely. More than likely.
More probable.
Um, yes, which I believe to be on a more than likely level than alien encounters or, more than likely it's biological. But how? You know, how has it remained hidden for so long? Oh, so many questions. And there are answers out there, but you just got to hit on them. At the right time in the right place with the right circumstances. And that's what it's going to take. Um,
Definitely. Mhm.
for sure. And Teresa says, what are the most common misconceptions people have about cryptozoology? Ooh, there's a lot.
Oh gosh, that's a good question, Teresa. Well, obviously the cryptozoology infers the study of animals or the animal kingdom. That's what zoology is, and cryptozoology means the study of hidden animals. Um, so the key word animal, and cryptid is a word that was invented by some of the founding fathers of the field, Dr. Bernard Heuvelmans and Ivan Terence Sanderson, and some of those guys who were zoologists. But these days, a lot of people think, you just mentioned aliens. There are a lot of people just based
Mhm.
on public perception and things that have happened through social media that aliens are cryptids, and that something called the Slender Man is a cryptid, or black-eyed kids, the
Mhm.
Wendigo, skinwalkers, a lot of these things that seem to be really, again, more, I'm not saying they don't exist, but if they do, they definitely bear the characteristics of a metaphysical or a weird, you know,
Yes,
haunting, or something like that. Not necessarily an animal that's running around in the
I
woods. I
agree.
mean, what is an animal
Right.
like about a black-eyed kid that's wearing a hoodie and walking down the road in the middle of the night? So that's definitely a misconception in terms of what a cryptid is, or what the original intent was. The definition of a cryptid was. Let's see what else.
And I think that we were talking about at one time the Mothman fitting in there.
Oh yeah,
Mothman is not a cryptid. Mothman is something more on
yeah.
the paranormal side.
I couldn't agree with you more. And
Yeah.
just since you brought it up, I announced tonight that my new Mothman book is going to be dropping here in a few weeks, and so this
You're going to have that
again, I'll have it with me at the conference.
with
But so yeah, Mothman is something I've investigated for years, and it's what's interesting about Mothman. I agree with you; it's not a traditional cryptid, but originally, before the name Mothman became popular in the media, folks around Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where this thing was being seen, were calling it the bird, or the Mason County bird. So it was called the bird, even though most of the original eyewitnesses described something that was obviously not a bird. It had wings, and that's pretty much where the similarity stops. But there are some cryptozoologists who've speculated that the Mothman was basically a giant unknown species of owl, like a man-sized owl, or some kind of monstrous bird like a thunderbird, which we've talked about, which is
Mhm.
a different type of cryptid. So there is a little bit of that kind of gray area sometimes where something seems to be, either in
Mhm.
this category or that category, but sometimes there's an argument to be made that, well, maybe it's in both, or maybe it's a case of people seeing multiple different types of things, which I refer to as composite identity, when people report seeing different things and they all kind of get lumped together and called the same thing. That happens sometimes. Hopefully that's another answer for you, Teresa. There's a lot of composite identity. So like what is a chupacabra? Well, in Puerto Rico, it's one thing. In Chile, in Nicaragua, it's another thing. In Texas, it's another thing. But they're all called chupacabras, but it's just a name. It doesn't necessarily describe a specific thing. It's kind of a catch-all phrase like boogeyman or something like that.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of I guess the biggest probably misunderstanding about cryptozoology, as far as I'm concerned, as a traditional old school cryptozoologist, is that there tends to be a little bit too much of the kind of paranormal and UFO stuff kind of getting thrown into the mix. Which, make no mistake, I find all of that fascinating. I love the UFO phenomenon and abductions and all that stuff is really
Hmm.
interesting. As I said, I've tagged along on ghost hunts. I think there's definitely a valid pursuit going on there in terms of a phenomenon. So, but we have to kind of keep, in my opinion, just kind of keep all of those different mysteries separate, and not have a tendency to kind of just lump them together, because it would be cool if Bigfoot was from another planet, or it would be cool, if
Right.
ghosts and aliens and Bigfoot and Nessie were all connected somehow. But I don't think there's enough evidence to support that.
No, I agree. I completely agree. Um, Talking about Nessie, has there been any sightings lately on her?
Oh,
On her? I mean, have there?
oh yeah, there's still about 10 good sightings a year on average.
Wow.
There's a group. I was part of an expedition there about a year and a half ago. Loch Ness Exploration is a new group that's sprung up, and they're very scientific. There's also a Loch Ness sightings registry, and there are a lot of people that are seeing. Obviously, there's misidentifications of waves and debris and things like that. But there are about 10 good sightings a year. Once you separate all the misidentifications and things, there are still about 10 good sightings a year on average. In fact, when I was there about a year and a half ago, I interviewed a couple that had a sighting on a particular morning. I was there like 7 hours after their sighting, and they even had a video on their phone, even though the thing was very far away. It was several hundred yards offshore, so it was not conclusive, but it did appear to be like two large black humps that were sticking very high out of the water, and maybe a third appendage that kind of looked like a head and a neck or something on the end. And it didn't look like debris or a wave effect to me. It looked like something animate moving across the bay. And so that was for me, it was pretty convincing, because these people had seen something that shouldn't have been in Loch Ness. So, and really the really cool thing, Debbie, is that the sonar evidence has continued, and we've had some really good sonar contacts in recent years by boats captains on Loch Ness who are familiar with Loch Ness, who've been on Loch Ness in boats for many years, and have captured sonar contacts of very large moving animate objects that are like 30 feet long, moving, through the loch several hundred feet down. And uh, sonar experts who've looked at those contacts are convinced that they are not schools of fish or biomasses of plankton or anything like that. That they seem to be, whatever they are, it's like one large object. So a lot of people don't discuss that, but the sonar contacts, sonar evidence, along with the visual sightings, have been the most compelling evidence. Now, there are a lot of photographs that have turned up at Loch Ness through the years, but we know that a lot of those have been hoaxed. That's been proven many
Hmm.
times, that there are people hoaxing photographs. And again, there are, Loch Ness is a strange place. There's a lot of weird currents that go against each other, and
Yeah.
wave effects and debris and things. And there's seals get into Loch Ness from time to time. So it's possible that, there are some misidentifications there as well. But I think it's an ongoing mystery. Seems to be evidence turning up all the time. So hopefully this new group that's down there, they're very well organized, and they've got lots of cool gadgets. So maybe they'll make some progress there.
It would be amazing. It really would. I mean, who wouldn't love the idea of having another animal that we could say, you know, she's for real. Now we've got proof. she's for real. And it would just bring out all these questions. How on earth did she avoid detection for so long? And how many are there? It's not couldn't possibly be just one. She had to have come from somewhere, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, where have they been? But I remember when it just made so much sense to me. You were explaining one day that this is a big world. It is an awful big world. And it's called the wilderness for a reason. That means because there's nobody there. They're all down in the cities and other places. That's why you don't see them. You know? And I just thought about it for I thought, that is the simplest and most rational explanation that I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, there are
Obviously,
places,
that's why.
definitely places untouched by man, and especially, deep water. Obviously, places like Loch Ness is like 750 to 800 feet deep and very,
Yes.
it's very challenging to go down and see what's down there at those great depths. I mean, think about the average depth of the oceans, are 12,000. That's the average depth of the
I mean,
oceans around the world, 12,000 feet. In fact, I've been
it
kind
is.
of, every year around this time, I get sucked into the Titanic stuff, and I'm watching Titanic documentaries for days on end. And I mean, the fact that that wreckage is, 12,000 feet down, I mean, it's took them how long to get down there and find it. And, even still, it's very challenging because of the immense pressure, the temperatures and the pressure. So if there are things that live in the deep ocean, I mean, we certainly haven't seen them yet, and there's just so much possibility, there, the potential for kind of undiscovered things living in deep waters. So but yeah, and to your point, the wilderness areas, we've talked about that as well. I mean,
Mhm.
gosh, as much habitat loss is going on, if you consider all of the vast mountain ranges and jungles and deserts and tundra and all those places where humans hardly ever go, it's quite intriguing.
Yeah, the more you hear about it, the more logical and the more sense that it makes. It's like, they are where we're not. That's why you're not seeing them. They, mostly inhabit where you're not. You're not going to see them if you're not there. But
Makes sense to me.
I
Yeah.
know I saw one recently had come out where somebody said it was just a film clip. To me, it looked like mistletoe in a tree. That was me. But it said, there it is. Do you see them? And I'm like, I see the mistletoe. Sure, that's mistletoe. But they claimed that it was Bigfoot.
Hmm.
And I thought, surely if you got mistletoe like that, you could have gotten a Bigfoot. Because I think that's all you got. So I mean, I'm so critical when it comes to those blurry pictures or those far away things. It's like people are getting the weirdest things up close and personal. You think you'd be able to get something like that a little bit better. So,
Yeah, that's
and, and
frustrating. You're
AI
right.
is our worst enemy. Yeah, AI is our worst enemy,
Yeah,
and
I've been
AI
making
has a lot of.
no,
Go ahead.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Sorry to talk over you there. I think I mean, I've actually been on this bandwagon for a while now, but especially with AI now, I really don't have much interest in alleged photographic evidence of cryptids. People
Yeah,
still send me videos and photos all the time, and I'm like, man, we've reached a stage now where you can't tell. I mean, if it's blurry and out of, like you saying, if it's blurry and out of focus and whatever, then why is that? Because pretty much anybody now can take an incredible photograph with their phone. I mean, there's nothing that should be out of focus or blurry at this point. It's pretty much anything. And then if it looks too good, then you have to start thinking about AI and Photoshop and stuff, because it's
yeah,
like, wow, that looks so. Yeah, sadly, I think we're at a point, at least in my field of cryptozoology, where photographic evidence is just doesn't have any value anymore. But fortunately, there are other avenues to explore, like DNA. We talked about
yeah.
DNA and eDNA, environmental DNA. Um, And I have the benefit in cryptozoology also to look for physical remains or physical trace evidence, things like footprints and stuff like that. You folks that are paranormal investigators, I've always kind of admired your passion, but I was like, geez, how are you going to really definitively prove you may be
Right.
experiencing things? And I've heard some cool EVPs and I've seen videos and things, but it's like, man, it's so hard. It seems like it would be such a challenge to get that conclusive evidence that, let's just call them ghosts. Ghosts exist. How are you going to prove that? That's, uh,
Right.
but I still
When
think
there's so
there's,
many hoaxes going on,
yeah,
and
that's
again,
the problem.
AI. AI again is not your friend in that either. And it really discredits a lot of good work that's been done to, everything being left up in a, oh, that's not what, this that's not true. Well, it
Sure. Yeah.
is, but proving it is much more difficult these days, just like with the cryptozoology. It's much more difficult these days. But I'll tell you what's not difficult is the loss of the white rhino. That's not difficult to understand. And our elephants are going down the same path, the hippos going down the same path. And that's that's where these conservationalists really need to, and they're doing a great job. I mean,
Hmm.
my gosh, they're 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 doing a great job with the black rhinos. I mean, in particular,
Yeah.
and they're just
No
doing
doubt.
everything in their power that they can do. And I give my hats off to them. I mean, these people are amazing. The way that they're protecting these animals, they're putting their own lives on the line every day to make sure, as far as they can, to make sure that these animals survive as long as they possibly can. And much respect to them for that.
Agreed. Agreed.
Um,
Yeah.
but before you go, I wanted to ask you one question. You were talking a little bit earlier about when you were little and you were growing up, and watching like Leonard Nimoy and with his show. I mean, Ken, to be offered a spot in a show with his partner William Shatner. I mean, that had to have been an amazing experience.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. I loved Star Trek long before In Search of came on the air back in the 70s, the old campy Star Trek show. But I sadly I've never met William Shatner. I've been on his show Unexplained several times now, like 6 times. And before that, I was on a show
Mhm.
he was on called Weird or What. That was a Canadian show. But in both cases, they film him separately. So he's taken to a
Yeah.
different studio and location and stuff. So he doesn't actually interact with any of the people on the show. So sadly, I've never had a chance to meet him. I did meet one of his handlers, excuse the term, at a conference a couple years ago, and I said, "What's Shatner like?" And he's a great guy. He loves sushi. He loves to talk, and he's just a hoot. He's fun to hang out. I mean, think about it. He's in his 90s now, and I mean, he's still going pretty
Yeah.
strong. Dude's been to space for real. I mean,
For
so
real.
he's an inspiration. He did make fun of me on one of his shows, so that was kind of a thrill for me that I was doing like an investigation, and then they cut to him, and he was basically just kind of uh, mocking my well, whatever it was, but it was like, okay, yeah, that's cool. William Shatner's teasing me or making fun of me. So I guess that's as close as I might get. I don't know.
Nothing's always the way you think it's going to be. It's
Definitely
always
not. But he's an
different.
icon. And, the fact that he's doing a show now, I mean, he and Leonard Nimoy were good friends, of course, but they were also rivals. I mean, anyone who knows that whole
Yeah.
history of they were even back on the Star Trek set, they would go back and forth. So I think that, after Nimoy's success on In Search of, that William Shatner always kind of wanted to one up him. So now he's doing a show like In Search of. So it's kind of like that the competition, even though Leonard Nimoy has passed, it's like the competition is still ongoing.
It goes beyond death, Ken. It just doesn't stop. Ken, you have been absolutely wonderful. And thank you so much for coming on the show. I so enjoyed having you. And I know so many people were thrilled to hear that you were going to be on the show. And I want to thank you so much for, accepting our invite for you to come on out here. Um, but I'll be seeing you soon at the con.
Yeah,
So I can't
absolutely.
wait.
Definitely looking forward to the conference. Thank you again for helping to connect me to that. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Should be a great time.
It should be, yeah. Yeah, we are going to have a great time. And let me just go ahead and remind everybody that you can meet Ken Gerhard himself at the Deep South Paracomic Con this August 9th and 10th in Ozark, Alabama. Ken will be there. Brett Wagner will be there. Lee Triana Terry Brown, who was just on a little bit ago, she will be there. Um, oh my gosh, there's is this the lineup. Tony Moran, Michael Myers. He was Michael Myers. Um, Brett Wagner was Leatherface. Just to clue you guys in, and of course, Lee Triana Terry Brown. She was on Repossessed on Hulu.
Yeah.
There's Keith Age, the
Keith
rock and
Age,
roll.
my good friend, he's going to be there. He's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we're gonna have a good time. It's gonna be Ken. Thank you again. I so totally appreciate it, and I can't wait to see you in August. I'm really looking forward to it. And everybody out there, I want to thank you guys so much for coming on the show and meeting Mr. Ken Gerhart here. And but remember, August 8th and 9th, Ozark, Alabama. Come on down to Deep South and you can meet him in person. Get a book, get it signed, get a picture. It's all there. Thank you, everybody, so very much. And we'll see you next Tuesday. Thank you again, Ken.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Debbie. Good show.